Welcome to the AngelsWin podcast with former Angels broadcaster Victor Rojas, featuring Geoff Stoddart and Chuck Richter. And now it's time to talk about some baseball. Victor, take it away.
It is that time of the week. It is the AngelsWin podcast. This is episode number 4. I'm Victor Rojas along with Geoff Stoddart and Chuck Richter. And as we do every single week on the AngelsWin podcast, we cheers really to ourselves this week because there's nothing else to cheers about. Gentlemen,
here's to us.
How are you guys doing today?
Doing all right. I've switched. I'm going with wine based off of today's performance because I'm feeling like there's going to be a lot of whining going on.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that. Four Roses bourbon right here. Cheers, gents. Good seeing you again.
Cheers.
Likewise. It's good to be seen, Chuck, as always. Little housekeeping. This is the AngelsWin podcast. We can be found on the iTunes Podcast Network, Spotify, Amazon, and iHeart. And if you have another suggestions for us to be on, please let us know. We're also on YouTube. We actually uploaded our video last week, and hopefully you enjoyed that. We certainly did. I put makeup on. Chuck did as well with the bourbon. Geoff, not so much. Maybe he needs to dab some on. But hey, we got to do what we got to do. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. If this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, well, it's pretty simple. Usually, what we do is we go back in time, check out what the Angels did last week. We will take a look ahead at what the Angels' schedule looks like coming up, and a mix of bag of everything in between. And I just know that today you could throw the script out. I mean, you could absolutely annihilate the script. But before we get into that, I do have to ask, Chuck, how was your last week personally, professionally, and leave the baseball thing aside because we will obviously talk about it.
It was good. A lot of on my side, on the personal side, my daughter's getting married this coming up weekend. So a lot of yard work, getting that, cleaning up all the blemishes and, touching up on paint here and there. And some family that I have not seen in a long time, they're going to be staying at the house here. And so, first impressions of the house, we've only been here just over a year in Tennessee. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be the first time I'm having the entire family in the same house in a long time.
Nice.
So
nice.
Stoked. And of course I'm stoked for my daughter. But I'm also nervous. I'm going to walk down the aisle with my daughter and give her away. And I know she's excited. She's happy, and I'm happy for her and her fiance. So
that's awesome.
It's a lot of that.
Feeling. I've done that. I've done that whole walking the daughter down the aisle thing. It's pretty cool. Geoff, how's your week, my man?
It was good. Let's see. My oldest is home from college. My youngest got his driver's permit, so we've started doing the driver's training thing, getting out on the road with him. Everything is blooming here in Colorado, so you go from going to bed one night, everything is brown and gray, and you wake up the next morning and you've got 2-foot weeds and your grass needs to be mowed. So I got that taken care of this weekend. It's looking better, but doing well. And Victor, how about yourself?
I can't complain. I can, but there's two things. If I did, nobody's listening, and if they did, they just don't give a shit. So that's just the reality of it. Everything's good. Family's here. Tyler's getting ready to graduate in a couple of weeks. Mom and Dad, my oldest daughter and her husband and daughter, the granddaughter, are coming in next week for graduation. So it's just a busy time. So everything is good and just hectic. Let's just put it that way. And then Mother's Day is next Sunday, and so I'm looking forward to all of that stuff. So we got all the pleasantries done, and I wanted to get the niceties, if you will, out of the way because I don't think it's going to get any nicer. Go the rest of the way. I think this is hop on board because what was supposed to be an amazing week, right? It started off great. You beat the St. Louis Cardinals, a team that is not good. That is no bueno, which is just mind-boggling to me. You got Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado on the corners, Wilson Contreras offensively, and that team is awful for whatever reason. Then they've got another the whole headache of they signed a catcher who's actually now just going to DH. But we'll set aside the St. Louis Cardinals for another time. But the Angels go into there. They sweep the St. Louis Cardinals, as they should.
Yep.
They come home to play the Texas Rangers. Now, it's a nice little test. They had back-to-back series where, mid-teams, you should have won a lot more games, I thought, but whatever. And then Texas rolls into town, a team that's played fairly well, has its own issues as far as the bullpen is concerned. We saw that over the weekend, much like the Angels. And the Angels lose 2 of 3. Angels should have been swept. If you think about it, if you go back to Friday, had they not come back and tied things up in that 9th inning and won it in extra innings, they would have been swept by the Texas Rangers. 10-1 yesterday on Saturday. And then the abomination that was Sunday's start by Jose Suarez. So we go, it was a roller coaster. You're like, all right, we've hit May. May 1st was on Monday. That was an off day. Like we've got some momentum going. You sweep the cards, you go home. Yes. And then everything stops. And I'll get your guys' initial reaction to this before we get started on any nitpicky or breaking things down. But Chuck, this is not good. And if I remember correctly, Geoff said we have to win 5. I mean, you should win 5 of these 6 games this past week. They didn't do that. They won 4, which in theory you would think that's good, 4 of 6, but they really, I thought they poo-pooed the bed over the weekend. I think they had an opportunity to really stake a claim, make a name for themselves. We are in May. We're starting to gel. We're going to start rolling. All of a sudden, here we go, the whole Jekyll and Hyde thing.
Yeah, and it's frustrating too because you look at Reed Detmer's start last night. The guy would just look incredible. I mean, early on, and he's shown flashes of ace stuff. And to see him not finish guys, and to see a lot of 0-2 base hits, and the leadoff walk killed him, and it's really frustrating. And then we just get obliterated, right? And then today, same thing. To your point earlier, Victor, yeah, we should have gotten swept. Thankfully, they did come back on Friday. And I tell you what, after that game on Friday and Saturday morning, I was pumped. I was thinking that we were going to sweep the Rangers, just the way that we were playing in that momentum. I thought that would carry over with Reed Detmers and knowing what, the stuff that he has. And the fact that we just shit the bed the entire rest of the weekend is really, really frustrating.
Real bad. After Friday night, coming out of the sweep, you go into Friday, you beat the team that's in first place, the team that you need to beat, and you showed you had some dog in you, right? Like you're ready to fight, you're ready to go, and we got a taste of that. And like Chuck, I woke up Saturday morning with a little bit of a skip in my step, a little chip on my shoulder, like, let's go, let's finish this, let's sweep them. And, yesterday, which, we're recording this Sunday evening, Saturday, just, there was the blow up 7th, I think it was the 7th inning that we blew up. They scored all the runs. Detmers was the first Angels pitcher of the week to not go at least 5 innings. He only went 4. So that was rough. But then, you look at yesterday compared to today, and it was, today was just hot garbage.
It really was. And it was one of those games too, as it continued to play out. You're like, this is one of those slugfests. It's going to be one of those ugly afternoons. The bullpen's going to get blown up by everybody. And, the Angels still have a chance. And all of a sudden it just continued to escalate. And the Angels offense just went nowhere. I think there was 6th inning, I think it was, 1st and 2nd, 2 outs with Rendon at the plate. And I thought at that point, I think they were down 4 at the time. I think it was 11-7 at that point. And I think if Rendon comes through there, then I think, okay, there's that momentum, and this is going to be one of those dogfights to the end. But made the 3rd out, and then things just blew up after the fact there. I don't think that's again, it's Jekyll and Hyde. I'm trying to figure out who and what this team is. And to Chuck's point, and to your point, Geoff, as well, is that Friday you sat there and saw, all right, this is a nice come from behind win. It's a nice ninth inning, put a run on the board because, I mean, if you look at the numbers offensively, this is a team that's hitting 216, 217, I think, late and close offensively. So you're like, it might be tough, but they figured out a way to get there, and they scratch out the win. Don't get me started on the one-knee catcher situation and how the Angels won that game, but that's a completely different show. That's a development show.
A win's a win.
A win is a win. You'll absolutely take it. That's why I'm thinking, okay, look, you need breaks to go your way. At some time through a course of a 6-month season, 162 games, there's going to be games that they don't break your way, and then there's going to be things that happen that break your way. Friday night was a perfect example, and that's where I thought that momentum would carry into Saturday with Detmers. You're feeling pretty good about it. And then you take your chances on Sunday if you win that game in sweeping a series before the Houston Astros roll into town. And unfortunately, we're not talking about that. And I guess we have to talk about this past week anyway, Aaron Loup going on the injured list. And what do you do with him? Hopefully it's nothing serious, but you committed $8.5 million to him. It's only been a month. It hasn't been a pretty month. And then you've got the Jose Suarez situation yet again. Jeff, to your point, or to you first, I'll go with Aaron Loup. I think there was an article in The Athletic talking about maybe the way pitch sequencing is not what he's been accustomed to in the past. And my mindset is, as I throw it to you, is if you sign a guy, Aaron Loup or anybody else as a free agent, you're basing that all on the information that you like the player, you think he plays with your team well, he fits in perfectly, we have a role for him, let him go out and you sign him, let him go out and do exactly what he's paid to do. That's why you gave him $8.5 million, because of what he's accomplished, right? And what you think he's capable of doing for you this year.
Right.
And I don't know this to be true. I'm just reading, I think the article was in The Athletic, his words. And if they are changing things to have him pitch differently, why in God's name would you ever do that? Why would you do that? If you signed him for a reason, let him go. Let him go. I mean, I don't understand that, if that is factual. But if I'm not mistaken, those were his words that he was quoted in The Athletic.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the people from our mailbag, David from Helena, Montana, brought up that same thing, where he mentioned the Athletic article about Loup, and essentially saying that the entire pitching staff and the organization has been directed toward a formula to follow. So it's almost like they've brought them in and they've changed them all, at least the way that this article read, to be pitching a certain way. And that would be similar to, bringing all the batters in and saying that you all have to do it the same way. You all have to have the same approach. You all have to have the same swing. And that's just not maybe a... If true, and I will say if true, and Chuck, I don't know that if you've heard anything, similar from anyone else in the organization or back channels that supports that, but that seems like they're messing with his mechanics.
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't have any insider information to support it, but you look at the results of some of these guys, and you're like, they had success elsewhere, right? And they've come in here and they're not having the same type of success. Right. Let them, to Victor's point, let them do what they've been doing, because they're comfortable doing it and they've had success doing it. And it's really frustrating if this comes out and it's true. I mean, that's just bad. I don't know if it's coming from the top, from the general manager, the scouting department, or a combination of the two. It's terrible. I think it's a bad way to go.
I don't know that we just find out, right? Because wasn't there some news that you can't necessarily ask a pitching coach or a coach be made available to answer certain questions because it might be negative. Would this be construed as negative? I mean, to me, and I didn't see the follow-up if Nevin was asked about these questions. You know, outside of Phil Nevin, who is the manager, and he's the point person, and I get that absolutely. But if there are situations from a sequencing standpoint or whatever the case may be, you know, why not ask? Hey, can we speak to Matt Wise just to clear this up? I mean, and it's not a negative slant. You're not trying to take the negative on it. You're just trying to take was it quoted correctly? And I'd imagine Sam Blum is of The Athletic. I think that was his article, is quoting people, you know, as they speak. It wasn't taken out of context, I don't think. Maybe it was. But how do we know as a fan whether that's the case or not, especially if we're not going to get the opportunity to listen to either the manager address it, the general manager address it, or the pitching coach address it and say, no, this is what he meant by that, and explain it. Now, they don't have to. They really don't. In today's world, they don't owe us that, I guess. I know the expectation is from a fan that, especially as dialed in as we all are now, with this wonderful thing called the internet and the Google and everything that you can get from it, we're a lot more informed than we were in the past. And I don't understand why you wouldn't at least go out and squash it, clarify that, especially, and even the whole whether or not coaches can speak without having questions submitted or whatever the case may be. I don't know if that's true either, but that was leaked out there as well. I will say this, as far as analytics concerned, I've said this a million times. I'm in favor of analytics. Analytics are a baseline. It is a jumping off point for an individual, for a team, for a game plan, whatever the case may be. Until you can show me that the analytics are able to update in real time based on the circumstances that are happening right now and not historical data, that's all they are. It's a jumping off point. And what I mean by that is, if Justin Verlander's on the mound, he's got historical data, what he's done at Angel Stadium, what he's done against the Angels, lineup, whatever the case may be. There's a jumping off point, patterns that he might fall into. That's awesome. But on any given night, he may not have a breaking ball, or the breaking ball is a different break, or he's got, for whatever reason, there's a little more run on the fastball. And that's where the eye test comes in. That's where players talk and communicate and explain, hey, it's coming out of his hand a little bit differently. And while the analytics were great to get me prepared, I've got to adjust on the fly as a player. Otherwise, we're a freaking robot. Otherwise, we're like, hey, we were handed the iPad, we were handed the sheets, the scouting report, and I swung from my ass 3 times because that's what I was told to do on this count. That's what I was going to expect. 0 for 3, I wear the collar, 3 punchies, hang with them. I didn't make any adjustments because I had no feel for the game because I'm basing it on analytics. That's got to stop. Across the board in baseball, that has to stop. I don't know why we're so fascinated with, hey, this is coming from above or wherever it's coming from. This is the way it should be. Look, if people in the front office want to manage, freaking go manage. If you think you can manage the bullpen better, then go be the manager and don't be the assistant GM or the player development guy or whatever the case may be, however it's set up in whatever organization. This is not just Angels related. This is MLB related. And I think it's a bigger problem that people want to talk about, but you can't ask any questions, because if you start asking any tough questions, everybody starts to cower and everybody starts to hide.
Yeah, and I'll say this to follow up on that point, Victor. You look at the starting rotation last season, and they were really, really good. Again, we've gone over this. Even Jose Suarez had an ERA under 4 as our 5th guy. And you look at this season, and Ohtani's been the only guy in the rotation that's been good. I mean, you look at Sandoval.
And he was pretty pedestrian the last time out. I mean, he was a mere mortal. Yeah. God forgive him. I mean, he was mere mortal the last time out, which was still pretty freaking good.
Right. You look at Sandoval's ERA, and it looks nice, but his FIP is 4.21, right? And it's like, Anderson, 6.11, Detmers, 4.06, Canning, 4.84. We won't even get into Suarez. I mean, we've already, unless you want to, guys.
We're going to segue into it. We will.
Oh, gosh. But starting pitching and, to me, defense have been the two biggest issues of this team. And it's not, and Jeff, we talked about this early, and I think episode 1 or 2, it's not the bullpen. We've made fun of the bullpen, but the bullpen. No, Jeff, did you know coming into today, and granted today, I think it's an exception, Chase Silseth had to be brought in to take over and in garbage time for Suarez because he couldn't get out of the second inning or third inning?
Get out of bed.
Third inning, yeah.
And the thing is, so he's being tasked to come in and pitch almost the entire game, right?
Sure.
So I'm going to throw that away. Davinsky, same thing, whatever. But this team, the Angels relief corps, their entire bullpen led all Major League Baseball coming into today's game with the 2.4 F-WAR, which is basically from Fangraphs. And they had the 5th best walk rate. They're second best at barrel rate at 4.5. They've actually been good. They've been getting a lot of soft contact. They've been BABIP'd to death. How many doinkers and bloopers have you seen come off the bats of our relief pitchers, right?
How much of that is a product of the sequencing that Aaron Loup made a point of? Mm-hmm. So if you're not missing bats, you're mishitting bats, and mishitting bats are going to typically fall in. I mean, they'll find the hole. I mean, it's the game. I don't need a chart of all the stats to tell me, why.
Come on, I had more.
No, I think it's wonderful. I think it totally rounds out our show completely. And I am completely moved by the fact you dropped Fangraphs in there and they're not a sponsor. But I'm just saying that you wonder how much of that plays into it, I guess is what I was saying.
It's every Sunday morning, get up, feed the dog, make a cup of coffee, sit down, and I start doing my podcast prep for the week. And I go back through all the games. And as I'm going through, I'm, one game after another, the bullpen, 4 scoreless innings, 4 innings, 1 run. I mean, they have been pitching fantastic. The whole blowpen thing that we were talking about weeks ago, we overblew it. Maybe I'll take a bit of that. I think that I was more railing on the defense, but I wasn't. I had a foot on the blowpen bandwagon. They have been probably the most solid part of this team. To your point, starting pitching, with the exception of Ohtani, and I love that we called his last outing pedestrian, which a guy goes 5 innings and gets 13 Ks. We're like, oh, but he gave up 4 runs, so Right. But that's how good he is, right? A guy can strike out 13 batters, and it's just an outing for him.
And he went 3 for 5, I believe, at the plate.
He did. He went 3 for 5 with an RBI that game. I mean, he's been incredible for us. But you're right. The starting pitching has been rough, although we've gotten 5 innings out of everybody until yesterday when Detmers only went 4. All week, all of our starters went at least 5. So,
and really, that's kind of the last point I want to make on the bullpen is once the starting pitching takes off, the bullpen's even going to get better. And they've been good to date, right? To Victor's point of not missing enough bats, sure, but it's working, right? So just something to keep in mind. And I think they will get better. I think that if Silseth replaces Suarez, he's going to give us some quality innings going forward.
So Suarez was pulled today, and they kind of trainer, manager, everybody goes out. Do we think he's going on the DL or the IL? And is this a real thing or something that they're just going to make happen?
It's an Aaron Loup thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's Chuck seems to want to talk about Suarez because he keeps mentioning him by name. Before we get to Jose, one last point on the whole bullpen thing. That's great that they're doing well, but they seem to be sucking up a lot of innings early, and you wonder how much of that will impact their ability to be as locked down as they have been in June, July, August, the dog days of summer rolling into September. depending on where this team is at. So it's just one of those things. I think we touched on this either episode 1 or 2 is about you need starters. You need the guys to go 6-7 innings. I mean, it's got to be the focus that you get work deeper into games, shortening games. You want shortened games, right? You want guys to be able to slot in 7th, 8th, 9th guys, however it is, high leverage, whatever, however Nevin wants to do it. But if you're continuously asking the bullpen to come in, well, today on Sunday it was Jose Suarez jumping out, so Silseth had to come in and suck up the innings in the third, and that's not good if you're seeing a lot of that, because it really just it screws up the setup of your bullpen going into the following series. So there's that. So it's just something to be cognizant about as we continue to roll through the month of May and into June, into the summer months. So Jose Suarez. So he had a pretty good start the last time out. Apparently, he fixed the pitch tipping thing that he was happening, if it was happening. Like I think I said in episode 3, is sometimes to appease or to help the mindset of a young player, teams have been known to kind of say certain things like that to take the pressure off. Right? Hey, I don't have to think about it. I was tipping pitches. I don't have to focus on that. On Sunday against the Texas Rangers, now it's an injury, perhaps. And maybe there is an injury. I don't know. Maybe he's been dealing with this injury, didn't want to say anything.
Sure.
But he's a guy without options. And if you're going to make a move, I had said earlier, maybe move him to the bullpen, get him out of the rotation, take the pressure off, and really just pitch him in games like today to kind of get that confidence going again, and hopes that it blossoms towards the end of the season. I don't know what Sunday's game does for his confidence, to be perfectly honest with you. And if he's hurt, you put him on the IL. If he's not hurt, is he going back out for another start? And I think that other start would be next weekend against the Guardians, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. Chuck, I'd love to get your thoughts on, because I know it's your favorite topic. He had 2 starts that weren't so bueno. Then he had a really bueno start, and then today was a no bueno start.
I just want to say, as soon as we went right into the segment of Jose Suarez, I don't know if you guys can hear it on my mic, but we've had 2 cracks of thunder that literally sounded like a nuke was dropped in my next door neighbor's house. So hopefully I don't lose power here. Anyway, back to Suarez. Maybe something is wrong, because he did pitch well last year. But I think for now, to your point, Victor, the only way that they're going to save him and not lose him by DFAing him is to make up some injury, really. Yeah. And maybe he comes back, Jeff, and you can finish up this point. And he's our long guy in the bullpen, like Abaria and Davidson, right? But I don't know. I don't, Victor, you've been watching baseball as long as we have and played. He's got a great changeup. His fastball is low 90s. But I think coming in from that arm slot, since he's not a very tall pitcher, it's right on that same plane that the hitter is seeing, right? And so there's not a lot of depth in anything he's throwing outside of the changeup. That's got some good fade to it. So
deception is something that he needs, right? You got to have some sort of deception, hide the ball a little bit more. I haven't looked at the graphs as far as his tunneling of pitches and make sure that everything's coming out of the same spot, which I think was something that made him somewhat successful last year. Was if you're having a hard time as a hitter picking up whether it's a fastball, changeup, breaking ball, because they're all coming out of the same spot, and he's pitching differently, he's pitching aggressively, he's pitching with confidence. That's one point. When you don't have the confidence and you're getting knocked around, and people are talking about your spot in the rotation, your tipping pitches, now a possible injury, that deflates a young player, regardless of the success he had last year. Remember, we're all different as humans, right? We could put forth this bravado that nothing's bothering us, either good or bad. We just take it in stride because that's the game. That's professional sports in general. But everyone goes home and processes information completely different. And maybe it does impact him. He is probably one of those guys that I feel like you do have to put your arm around him, pat him on the backside. You're fine. Don't worry. And just constantly be positive towards him, as opposed to, being a guy you have to rail on sometimes so that they listen to you. We'll see what the injury is. If there is an injury, we'll see how it plays out. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see Jose Suarez ending up on the injured list. So that's just another issue that the Angels will have to deal with in this coming week. Let's shift a little bit before we get into next week. I know Jeff wanted to touch on the American League, and by the way, coming into this week, everything about the Angels was they could beat up on the sub 500 teams and have struggled against the teams that are 500 or better. And I did some math, including this Texas series. They're now 5-11 against teams that are 500 or better, and they're 14-5 against teams that are 500 and below, or below 500. So that's pretty much who we've seen this year, and that's got to turn around. I mean, that really has to turn around. If you're going to play that 14-5 type of baseball against a sub 500 team, you better at least be playing 500 ball against the really good teams, and that just hasn't happened. So let's touch on a little bit on the American League in general, because division wise, the West is wide open going into the season. Everybody talked about it's Houston and everybody else. Look what Seattle did last year. You just never know what's going to happen with the Angels. Oakland is what Oakland is, and Texas, they spent a lot of money. Who are the Texas Rangers? Texas has been atop the division. Houston's dealt with injuries. They had a huge blow this past week. Luis Garcia, he's Tommy John now. So they have a lot of issues as far as depth in their starting rotation. The Central is the Central. I don't know how else to say it. The Central is what the Central is every year, whether it's National League or American League, but pretty much in the American League, you got a chance to win. And it's kind of a 500 thing. It's Minnesota. The Guardians are there in second place, a couple games over 500, or a game over 500, or right around there. And then you got this American League East behemoth with the Tampa Bay Rays just playing unbelievable baseball. And oh, by the way, the rest of the division is playing pretty good baseball because they have to in order to keep up. I mean, it's just amazing what that division has been able to do so far, with Tampa setting the pace.
It's staggering. There is not a team in the AL East that is sub 500. The New York Yankees are coming in as of this evening in last place, and they're one game over 500. Tampa Bay, they still haven't lost 10 games yet. They've only lost 7. They're not even, they're 3 games away from double digits. That team they're 800. They're 28-7. I mean, this is, talk about off to a good start. It reminds me, and Chuck, you'll need to remind me of the year, because we tease them a lot, that the Seattle Mariners won, what was it, 118 games, and then they were and then eliminated very quickly, didn't in the playoffs. But
they have a banner hanging.
They got a banner. They got the banner. And as Victor said, the Minnesota Twins in the Central, 3 games over 500. Everybody else is under. The
Guardians are going to give the Twins a run for their money, though. I think. Yeah.
Agreed.
And
I think so.
Fortunately, we got to play them next weekend.
We're gonna find out about them pretty soon.
Yeah.
We're not playing them. We get to talk about the Angels playing the Guardians. That's the beauty of what we do, is we get to sit back and relax and chill out and just watch them play. But you're right. I think that Central Division is, I mean, what's happened to the White Sox is crazy. Because going into 22, you thought they had, pretty good nucleus of guys, young players, and mix of veterans, where they'd make some moves, but didn't play out under Tony La Russa. He's gone, and it seems very dysfunctional there. Kansas City, my oh my, I don't know what to tell you about Kansas City. They're going in the wrong direction, and I don't see a way out for them right now.
Yeah, Kansas City, the only thing they've got going is they're looking over at Oakland going, at least we're not them.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's a bad season so far.
I think the Yankees are in trouble, and I would not be surprised if they actually do finish in last place. You look at Donaldson and Aaron Hicks, big contracts. They got to play those guys. They've stunk, right? Carlos Rodon still on the IL. Severino out. Their bullpen, which was a major boon for them last year, they've been terrible.
Yeah.
Judge and Stanton are on the IL. I mean, however, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, didn't the Yankees kind of pick it up a little bit this past weekend? Still, they have a chance. They could get buried in the next month with those guys shelved.
If Tampa keeps playing the way it's playing, and it's almost impossible to maintain that. Right. But they've done it for 5-6 weeks now. Mm-hmm. If they keep that pace up, there's a lot of teams going to be buried in that division. So,
how about the Orioles, though, Victor?
They're
how about the Orioles? I know,
fun team to watch. Everyone keeps talking about their youth. Actually, nobody really is talking about them a whole lot. You don't hear a whole lot about it other than their celebrations. Amazing choreographer. Right, so they've got the Paula Abdul of choreography for home run celebrations, which is amazing. But that's an interesting young team. And look, you get a young team that doesn't know any better and playing with confidence. That's a dangerous team to play. That's a dangerous team to play, especially if they get hot towards the end and rolling into the playoffs that way. It's almost like you don't know any better, right? It's like, hey, we're not supposed to be here. Let's just have some fun. It's like, and they're talented. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch the rest of the way. The Western Division, that's where I think there's still obviously plenty of baseball to be played. But if you're the Angels, you're just like, man, if you could just put it together for a 2-3 week stretch and get to the top and maybe just a little elbow room, a 2-game or a 3-game lead, so you can kind of feel good about yourself, and then hopefully things start to fall in place. That's where it's like, remember, this was a division that was it was Houston and everybody else, and everybody else is just playing for a wild card spot. Sure. That's not the case. I mean, the division is easily on the table for those top 3 teams.
The Angels have to start beating good teams. And, Victor, you brought up their record for teams sub 500, above 500. I'll put it a different way as it relates to series. So the Angels have won 6 series so far this season. All 6 of those series have been against teams that are below 500. The Angels have lost 5 series so far this year. All 5 of those series were against teams that were at or above 500. It's great that they're beating the teams that they need to beat, right? The sub 500 teams. But if you're really going to be in it, and if you really want to make a push toward the playoffs and get into the playoffs and do something, you've got to start beating the good teams. And, we've got a chance coming up this week with the Astros and then the Guardians. I'm not sure if Altuve is scheduled to be back. Well, I know he's been cleared for baseball activity, but I don't know that he's going to be back in time. But that's a team that, once they get healthy, they could be a problem again. So
right. And we're facing their top 3 pitchers, Jeff, in this series starting tomorrow. Hunter Brown, Framber Valdez, and Christian Javier. So going to have to come through. And I think, we talked about the starting pitching. It's also hitting with runners in scoring position that's got to be fixed. I mean, case in point,
it's getting a little bit better. It's getting a little bit better overall. I mean, little. You zoom the lens out. Overall, it's gotten a little bit better. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Today was frustrating, though, Victor, when you get Hunter Renfroe coming up with the bases loaded 3 times. And, he got a sac fly on one of them, and then he hits a solo shot in the 9th inning, with nobody on.
Right.
It's just stuff like that just kind of rubs it in. Here's the good news, because we can't be all bad, right? It's just sour tonight. Anthony Rendon, since the last time that we've talked, he finally hit a home run today, but his on-base percentage, guys, is .422. I mean, and he's he's driving in runs though, Victor. I mean, he's doing what you're supposed to do in the cleanup spot, right? He's coming through. He's almost hitting 300. I think it's like 290 something. But to get him going and to keep him on the field, man, that's going to be huge for the Angels this year.
Yeah, need him to clean up the defensive side though. 6 errors already on the season, which matches the errors total that he had last year. And so, he's been known as such a really good third baseman. Hopefully it gets cleaned up. And I know he's been dinged up and hasn't been feeling 100%, but that's across the board. The defense needs to clean things up.
And a lot of his plays today.
Yeah.
But yes.
But a lot of his errors, Jeff and Victor, have been just like that lackadaisical throw to second base or the flip, the underhand, across the diamond, to first base that pulls the first baseman out the bag. It's just I believe those things can be cleaned up because the guy is great at stopping the ball at the hot corner. I mean, those plays he's made over the weekend are phenomenal.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, coming up this week, the Angels have a 3-game series at home, as we mentioned, against the Houston Astros. And this will be their first meeting of the year against the Astros. And then they go on a road trip and they take on the Cleveland Guardians for 3 over the weekend. So 6 games coming up this week for the Angels. Jeff, last week you went with 5 as the number of wins for this club. Astros, Guardians, 6 games. Who's setting the line as far as the over-under?
I'll set it. I think this is another one where, as mentioned before, you got to start winning. And, as we look at these teams, the Astros are, they're 1 game over 500 right now. So they're kind of in that spot of, this is a team that we typically lose series to. You got to take 2 or 3 from them at home. You go into Cleveland, you're playing a team that's 3 games under 500. They're in 3rd place in the weakest division in the AL. You got to take at least 2 or 3 from them. So I'm setting the line at 4. We need to win at least 4 of the 6. Ideally, it would be great to sweep one of them. And even more ideally, it would be great if that team was the Astros, because we need to start putting distance between ourselves and them now. But again, before they get healthy and start looking to make a move.
Yeah. And what a change, right? If we would have did this show on Thursday, what a different tone. Actually, let me take it back. If we would have did this show Saturday morning, these are like future World Series 2023 champs.
That's why we don't do it. We wait till Sunday night, big guy.
What a difference 36 hours makes.
Yeah. The wouldas, the couldas, and the shouldas.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta say that game on, what was it? Was it Wednesday or Thursday when they came back late against the Cardinals? It was Thursday, right? With the Lamb home run to tie it, and then the Trout home run to go ahead. I was pumped, man. Yeah. And to see them getting shut out almost the entire game on Friday night, that just sucked. And then, we came back and won it, and I was like, yes, let's go. But anyway, it is what it is.
I like the 4 number that Jeff threw out for the week. I think that's a fair number. That's the expectation. It should win 4 for sure.
Yeah,
indeed.
I like it.
Cool. Jeff, let's get to the mailbag, shall we?
Mailbag. All right. So first of all, thank you to everyone that's been sending in your questions, your comments. Love them. We're getting them from all over, truly. The first one is one that I kind of categorized for being a question for all of us, and it comes from Sid from Rancho Cucamonga. And Sid asks, are you guys fans of resting players in the beginning of the season? I understand resting them in the dog days of the season, but not in the first month. And I think that has been, fairly interesting. I want to say it was 2 weeks ago, the Angels had a stretch of 5 games, and Mike Trout was set out 2 of the 5. What do you think about, the early load management that we're seeing right now?
You want me to go?
Chuck, yeah, go ahead, Chuck. I'll jump on the heels of you.
If memory serves me in my latest research, we're 5-0 in games Ohtani and Mike Trout have rested?
My son Griffin will be thrilled that you threw that out there because he told me to throw it out if nobody else did.
Okay. Win. Back to you, Geoff.
No, it's a good point. I mean, but keep going though. What do you think about the early load management? Are you liking this? Not so much?
I will tell you, initially when I see the lineup card and I don't see Trout and Ohtani in there, I just cringe, right? I mean, but that's just the fan in me. But you have to understand that oh man, I want to go a different direction with this so bad. Damn it. Anyway, I'm trying to, I guess I'm.
Love it.
We're not ripping the Band-Aid off yet, huh?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. All right.
You know what? I will say this. It has worked so far to the Angels' advantage, but what if it didn't? And these are our superstars, and I think that getting a day off here and there is fine, but it's been a lot. And I'll just give it to Victor because, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get you. And look, it's nouveau. It's bougie to do this whole load management stuff. That's not how I grew up in the game. You played until your arm fell off, and then even then you tape a couple of aspirin to it, and you keep playing until you can't play. I mean, that's just how that's my mindset. So it's kind of everything nowadays is a copycat. Whether copycat league, copycat whatever, right? And so I think there is some positive aspects of load management, but I think there's a time and a place for it. I think if you start to me, like if a guy is really off to a slow start, then I can understand it. If a guy's off to a hot start, I wouldn't want to come out of the lineup if I'm swinging the bat well. I mean, if I'm dinged up, that's a different story. If I tell the manager, hey, I need a day off, that's a different story. But it's just the world that we live in today. And that's just how professional sports seem to work. It's not my thing. So I don't know if it works over, course of time. If you got historical data that proves, hey, if you load management guys this way or whatever the case may be, you're going to be, you have a success rate of whatever, 75%. I don't know. But that being said, everyone's built differently. Every roster's built differently. Mindsets are different. So I don't know. Again, I go back to the beginning, and I don't want to prolong this answer. Is like, dude, I want to play every single day. If I'm an everyday guy, I want to play every single day. That's how I look at it.
Indeed. Agreed.
That's what the answer I should have gave.
Yeah, well, but you went a different way. You went down a different rabbit hole. That's not my fault.
Hey, Victor, on that, before we move on from that, do you think with the older guys it's justified a little bit, because they've been on their feet a lot, they can't handle the day-to-day as much as
I think it's a conversation you got to have. Again, I don't think you can take a blanket approach to say, hey, this is our philosophy and we're going to implement it. We believe this is the best way to win games. How would anybody who is, unless they've actually put on a uniform and played games, 162 games, 6-month schedule, or minor league baseball, how would you have any idea what it takes to win, to load manage, or to manage loads, if you will? I don't know. You can't, like a lot of things in sports, you can't take a blanket approach to anything. I think you have to take it on an individual basis. So, yeah, there is some truth to the fact that older players need more time off, but you got to ask that player. The player is either going to be honest with you or he's going to lie to you. And if he's lying to you and you think he needs a day off, the odds are is he probably needs a day off because what you're seeing is a slower bat. His reflexes aren't as quick. And those are the things that's what a manager does. And that's the whole part of managing is managing personalities, the feel of your clubhouse and what you're seeing and putting it all together. Getting a piece of paper and saying, oh, this is how guys are going to play or should play this week. That's just not my thing.
And really, Victor, it's right. It seems like Nevin, when he talks to the press and they said, well, why is he getting off? It was a scheduled day off. Has he looked at the calendar ahead of the season and has already circled days off for Trout and Rendon and Renfroe.
Like it.
It feels that way. In Jeff, to our point earlier, getting back to the formulated shit for the pitchers these days with the Angels, it feels too calculated and robotic.
Right.
Like the computer software said to do this. Let's do it.
It's over.
Phil Nevin wasn't that guy. Let's just put it that way. As a player,
I
was not that guy.
No, and I don't think that's coming from him at all.
Right.
So.
All right, Chuck, let's get you into something that's let's calm you down.
We almost have time for just one more.
Oh, one more. Okay. Ooh.
Oh, well, come on. I think there's one that we need to get to Victor.
We need two more. Let's give Chuck his thing. Chuck, do you remember, didn't you used to be on Drive Time Radio or something like that? Where you where you talked about the minor league system for the Angels?
Yeah, on AM 830.
What did that used to sound like when you were on there?
It's time now for the Richter Scale, with an in-depth look at the Angels' top minor league prospects. The Richter Scale.
What's shaking, baby?
Times.
I love it.
What's shaking, baby?
Toby from Illinois has a question taking us back to the Richter Scale. He's a longtime listener, a first-time questioner. He was checking out our top 30 prospect list and really enjoyed it. And he said, with O'Hoppe and Neto graduating from the list soon, who would be your top 5 prospects as of right now, excluding those two?
Well, I think you could add Chase Silseth because I don't think he's going to qualify either. And he was our number 3 guy, O'Hoppe, Neto, and Silseth. I would go Edgar Cuero, number 1. Kyron Paris, number 2, who has a OPS over 900. I think he stole 3 bases today, by the way, and then clubbed another home run. He's got 8 home runs. Plays great defense, second base, shortstop. Caden Dana, Kai Bush, and then maybe Coleman Crow. I think that's where I'd go. Maybe Sam Bachman if he, pulls it, turns it around a little bit.
Good. I love it.
Yeah,
love the throwback to the Richter Scale.
And you got to close out that little mini segment with the outro. I mean, do you have the outro of the Richter Scale?
Oh, you all don't want to see that.
I think someone forgot to upload that one. All right, we'll do one more. Victor, this is for you. It comes from Josh from Austin, Texas. He says, Victor, University of Texas alum here. I'm super ecstatic to hear your voice calling Big 12 tournament. How excited are you to be back in the booth, and why this tournament to get back involved?
Oh, man.
So I was pretty excited to see that, too, when you announced that this week.
Yeah, I'm pretty jazzed about it. I was just asked by ESPN if I wanted to be a part of it. And since I live in the Dallas area and Big 12 tournaments in Arlington, they asked if I would do a couple of days worth of games. So I'm going to do 4 games of the first 2 days of the Big 12 tournament. And I'm going to do a regional the week after, one of the 16 regionals as well. And I don't know, until those get named, I don't know which one I'm going to be doing. So I'm looking forward to it. And it's kind of dipping the toe back in the broadcast booth. It's been fun. And I'm looking forward to doing some of that and then some amateur baseball as well later on in the summer with a pretty good amateur baseball organization, the New Balance Future Star Series. So we'll see where it all leads.
Fantastic.
And Victor, where can those games be heard? ESPN Plus?
I think game 1 is going to be on ESPNU, and then the rest will be on ESPN Plus. And I'm working with Greg Swindell, the Longhorn great Greg Swindell. So
nice.
I appreciate the question. Hook 'em, that's right.
There's a lot more questions just for you, Victor. Trust me.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole list I'm looking at, oh my gosh, it's all to Victor.
We'll get to him next week, maybe. Or maybe I just need to reply to them via email. How about that?
There you go.
At least this would be nice. Gentlemen, another fantastic show. That brings us to the end of episode number 4. For those of you that listen to our show, we thank you so much for listening, and being so positive as far as the feedback via the ratings and via Twitter. Please continue to send us your comments and suggestions. We certainly appreciate it. And Jeff, Chuck, another fantastic episode. Thank you, guys.
You got a point to make, Jeff. What were we going to say?
Just one last thing before we go. Chuck, I just want to say to you and your daughter, just the richest blessings for all of you and your family next weekend. Love you guys, and I hope for a beautiful day, and congratulations on her wedding. I'm excited for you.
God bless, brother.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right, folks, we really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Angels Win podcast with Victor Rojas, Chuck Richter, and Geoff Stoddart. Go Halos and drive home safely.
Say goodbye.